of central India, something called a Salva Judum, which the state was projecting as a spontaneous uprising of the tribals against the Maoists, and which we discovered to be a state-promoted, patronized, and funded by large corporations. And there was, this has been substantiated by a report of the government itself, Ministry of Rural Development. I'll come to that later. Dr. Binayak Sen has been working in this area for a long time. He's been reporting, and his report of his, he and his colleagues have reported extensively through the 80s on what has been happening with children or people, adult tribal populations in these areas. He's been reporting about how the body mass index of the tribals in this area has actually far below even the average. That famine-like conditions operate, that children have died of blood, dysentery, etc., etc. But in 2005, after a report came out on Salva Judum, and when PUCL became more active in reporting various atrocities that were taking place, I think that's the administration, the authorities, found it unacceptable. And various, for a year, 2 years, he faced threats, warnings, but he carried on. And 2 months before, in fact, a month and a half before he was arrested, on 31st March 2007, when PUCL reported a custodial massacre which had taken place in a police station of tribals. I think that was probably the last straw, and that's when the government decided to prosecute him on a trumped-up charge with concocted evidence and moved again. And then we know about the trial that he has been given life imprisonment. Friends, the important thing to note is that Dr. Binayak Sen was not the only person who was affected or who's been silenced. A number of social activists who used to work in that area have been silenced. The ashrams of Gandhians like Himanshuji have been broken and they have been driven away. Because in a war that takes place inside a country, what Indians are discovering for the first time, we have been sleeping so far, we have discovered for the first time, but a large number of Indians have lived through that experience. We are discovering is that there is complete clampdown, that the war doesn't just mean moving in of troops. It means laws, it means that the constitutional freedoms that Indians take for granted do not operate in these areas, that the various institutions of state or democratic institutions that India claims it has, and which are supposed to be very robust and vibrant, are not allowed to function in these areas. And it's a deliberate and conscious policy. It's not something that happens accidentally, it's a deliberate conscious policy. Therefore, from media to social activists to any independent observer or human rights or civil liberties groups that wants to go and enter these areas and report from there, finds that he or she faces, and these groups face, a lot of problem, a lot of obstruction, including attacks, and then they're driven away by the police, which says that, look, your life is in danger, we have to protect you. The only way in which we can protect you is by moving you out of this area, because the tribals are very antagonistic towards you. And these are the tribal groups which have been promoted as the vigilante groups by the state. This is something that various social activists, who are by no stretch of imagination even admirers of Maoists, who don't even subscribe to that, Medha Patkar, or the people who belong to the National Alliance of People's Movement, or other social activists who have a strong position on Maoist, even they are not allowed, and they've been thwarted, they've been attacked. This is the situation within which one has to understand what. So what is this war, and why this war then becomes very interesting. This happens to be, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand happen to be two areas where the Maoists have been working for a number of decades, and they have been strongest, particularly in these two areas, where they also claim to run a parallel administration. Before I describe, what they've been doing, it's one thing you have to keep in mind is that Maoist activists moved in this area towards the end of 1970s. So they have been working there for more than 3 decades. That is one thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind is that the war that we are seeing today take place in 7 states of central India, in which more than 250,000 troops or paramilitary formations, both of the central government and the state government. Paramilitary formations in India are modeled along the line of Irish constabulary of the colonial Raj, which was meant to suppress and subjugate people. Is the same tradition and the same practices and the same training continues even after 47. That is very important to keep in mind. So you have 250,000 troops, both comprising battalions of the central paramilitary forces as well as the state paramilitary formations deployed in this area. But at the local level, in a warlike situation, and anybody who knows or is familiar with counterinsurgencies or so-called low-intensity conflicts would know that there is a certain pattern to counterinsurgencies or suppression, military suppression movements which take place, where local commanders become very important. The civilian administration loses its power. The military or the paramilitary or the security apparatus gains control of these areas, and they are the ones who call the shots. Judiciary becomes more or less ineffective, and I'll come to that later. Now, the question that arises is that the Maoists moved in here in late 70s and have been working there for more than 3 decades, but it's in 2005 that the government chose to start first through Salva Judum by encouraging vigilante groups to emerge and attack the Maoists or their sympathizers, followed then in 2009 by an openly military operations which began across these 7 states, which is called Operation Green Hunt. Why did it happen? The interesting thing is, if you read a document that Ministry of Rural Development brought out in 2010, there was a committee set up by this ministry to look into unfinished task of land reform in 2008. The report appeared towards the end of 2009, beginning of 2010 in a draft form, which is still available on the net. It's an extremely important document because this document has some very revealing things to say about it. Its chapter 4 is devoted to the land issue in the tribal areas, the forest and the land issue in the forest in the tribal areas. It begins by saying that when a new state of Chhattisgarh was carved out in 2000, along with Jharkhand, there are 2 states that were carved out. The new state government decided that one of the things that they must, in order to bring so-called development, that one of the things they have to do is to try and encourage mining areas to open up, and that mining appears to be one of the most lucrative ways of attracting foreign direct investment. Okay? So they signed a number of memorandum of understandings with various mining corporations. But they discovered, and this is, I'm going entirely by the report of this ministry, which is an official document. It goes on to say, meeting resistance of the tribals, they then decided, I mean whoever it was a deliberate, obviously a decision taken, that without creating a divide between, amongst the Adivasis, the tribals, there would be no way in which the government could implement its policy of opening up of these forests for mining conglomeration. Now please understand, if there is one lucrative area today where finance capital wants to enter, it's the mining area, because there's huge amount of profit to be made. Just to give you a slight anecdotal evidence of this, there is a chief minister of the state of Jharkhand who ruled for 3 years. And there is a case pending against him where the prosecutors have accused him of having taken bribe valued at $1 billion. Now, any chief minister who gets a $1 billion from the mining corporation is not going to get it as a mark of charity. It's obviously because the corporations who gave him money as a bribe knew that they would stand to make 10 times or more that amount of money. We have also another state in India. Bangalore is famous, and Obama has made it even more famous. Bangalore is the capital of Karnataka state. The state government there is completely beholden to a mining lobby, which is also represented and is a partner in the coalition government which rules that state. There was a time, when then the chief minister, which is equivalent to your governor, tried to weaken their hold, and he found that he faced the threat of being dethroned. So they had to compromise, and that coalition was restored. So that is the strength of control or the power that the mining lobby enjoys, and there is a lot of money to be made. So in 2000, after meeting this resistance, it was a decision consciously taken that you have to create a divide. And what better way of creating a divide by trying to organize those sections of the tribal people who, for what a variety of reasons, had antagonistic or were hostile towards Maoist. And I'll come to that, what is it, when I talk about what the Maoists have been doing in this area. That's why in 2005, then the reports goes on to say that Salva Judum started. It was financed by two of India's large Indian multinationals. One is the House of Tatas and the other is the House of SR. These are two very large corporations which invested and financed the Salva Judum. And the report goes on to say that this is the largest land grab since Columbus discovered America. Actually, India. A slip of Freudian. But that's what the report, the title, the chapter, chapter 4 is precisely that. The largest land grab since Columbus discovered America. That is the title of that chapter. And it goes on to say, this report goes on to say that these corporations are waiting to get mining leases in this area from where 350,000 people were displaced. 60,000 of them were pushed into camps. And then anybody who's familiar with counterinsurgency knows the importance and the strategic importance of strategic hamlets that are created, and these camps were nothing but that. These were like police camps or camps where population were moved, surrounded by and controlled by the security military forces. And that they're waiting now for this land from which people have been displaced to be handed to them so that they could start their mining activities. We believe that what this reporter says had been our assessment also and our understanding. And this report has only substantiated what we have been saying, that there is a direct link between Operation Green Hunt and an attempt to open up these areas, and especially the forest areas of central India, to mining corporations, because these areas are rich in iron ore. In Bastar's Dantewada district, which is one of the most seriously affected center of war, where Operation Green Hunt at its peak boasts of one of the finest quality of iron ore. And in fact, in 1950, when the Japanese funded National Mineral Development Corporation opened certain mines here, much against the wishes of the tribal, where they funded so that they could get iron ore from this area, and iron ore in fact is loaded onto trains. There are no passenger trains. Out of 10 trains that run in this area, there is only one passenger train and 9 goods train which carry this iron ore to Visakhapatnam harbor, from where it is loaded onto ships and taken to Japan. And now Japan, Korea and China have become the largest importers of iron ore. So there is a long history also to tribal resentment and from their displacement from their own lands, lands which were promised. The lands which were first they were told that in exchange for land, they'll get employment in these mining corporations. They discovered to their horror, not only did they get very few jobs, the jobs that landed them were those of the unskilled labor,